Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Unearth Horticulture. Welcome to the greenhouse. It is actually quite toasty in here today for late March. The sun is out and it is heating up this greenhouse quite nicely. So my fan system has kicked on. It's pulling some nice billowing March winds through the greenhouse, shaking my shade cloths. And we're gonna do an Unearth Horticulture episode today, in spite of the wind, because we're Kansans. But I'm gonna do most of my audio recording in the greenhouse, and then I'm gonna show you the processes out in the garden, all right? So, what are we talking about today? We are talking about greens or cole crops. So, if you've seeded lettuce or spinach out into your garden directly from seed into the ground, you might have already done that. You should have already done that. But if you're looking for green transplants, this is the time to get your greens transplanted out to the garden. We're getting warmer nights now. We're not getting deep, hard freezes. And you should be safe in putting your lettuces, your spinach, your Swiss chard, your kale, your arugula all out in the garden. Now, I just listed a bunch of different types of cole crops, or a.k.a. greens, and this is a category of vegetables that are grown for just that. They're green foliage, they're leaves. They're not grown for their flowers, and that is an important stipulation that we're going to talk about here in a second. But stop into the plant bus and grab yourself some greens. I've got this nice summer picnic lettuce mix with 10 varieties of lettuce in it, so you can really get the scope of the loose leaf lettuce varieties that are out there. Get some really pretty salad. I've got an alfresco mix, which has radicchio and arugula and lettuce in one pot. I've got Swiss chard bright lights. I've got kale storm, which is a mix of beautiful kales. And then I feel like I'm missing one. I probably am, but we're gonna leave it there for now. So, all that to say, I have lots of greens ready for transplanting on the bus. So you can watch this video and come get your greens, or go get your greens and then watch this video. I know I'll be telling you all this weekend to watch this video. All right, so we've already established that we are growing these suckers for their leaves and not for their flowers or for their roots. And that's something that distinguishes greens from other types of vegetables. So now we want to talk about how we keep them growing greens, right? We want to talk about how to prevent flowering. Because once a plant flowers, it starts putting all of its energy into that reproductive process of flowering and stops putting energy into producing those leafy greens that we want to eat in our salads, right? Okay, so let's talk about what causes flowering in greens so that we know how to prevent those factors, okay? There are three main things that cause flowering in greens. First, it has to do with temperature. So the warmer our temperatures get, the more likely this particular type of plant, the greens, are going to start to flower. That warmth is something we want to avoid if at all possible. So planting early and harvesting early are really valuable ways, important ways to prevent flowering. The next two have to do with plant stress. So you may know this already, but if you don't, this is for you. Plants that are under stress tend to flower. It's kind of like nature throwing up its white flag at the end of it all, saying, all right, this is my last chance to reproduce before I die, okay? So flowering is often a stress response, and in greens, what can stress them out is drought stress or often nutrient deficiencies. So to prevent drought stress, the option is simple. You need to make sure and you keep consistently moist soil and don't let the plants get too dry, okay? And then as far as nutrient deficiencies go, it's important to plant your lettuce and your other types of cole crops into a fortified growing space, whether that's a pot or a raised bed or your in-ground garden. Make sure that you have some sort of added nutrients or compost in that soil so that it is ready to support all this fast leafy growth, all right? It takes more nutrients than you might think to produce all of these leaves that we can eat. So those are your three things that can cause flowering, and most of them have something to do with stress. Heat causes flowering, drought stress, and then nutrient deficiency. So we're gonna avoid all of that by planting early and harvesting early, by keeping them well watered, and by planting into a nutrient dense plot of ground or container. All right, so let's get planting. I am going to demonstrate 2 planting methods of your greens. First, I'm going to demonstrate how to plant your greens in ground outdoors, and it is quite windy, so I'm going to record the audio in here and overlay that demonstration video because there is no way you'd be able to hear me in this wind out there. All right, so first things first, you want to find your plots. Make sure that you have nutrients worked into the soil. You've either got compost, manure, fertilizer, something worked in to make sure that your greens are not nutrient deficient, because you don't want bitter greens right off the bat, right? So start by fortifying your soil. I've already turned in my soil last fall with compost, so it should be set to go. It's quite dusty soil, but I don't want to get it all muddy to deal with that, so I'm just going to plant in the dust and let the wind do what it will, and then I'll water in at the end here. So first you need to space your plants before you can plant them. I usually space them between 6 to 12 inches apart so they get some good airflow around them, but also so that I'm not wasting space. Then all there's left to do is plant them, right? So plant them so that you're not burying the leaves, but also you don't want that potting mix exposed, the root ball exposed, because that can cause them to dry out really quickly. So do a good job of leveling that out around the crown of the plant. The crown of the plant is just where the leaves are coming from, at the base of the plant. And then you're gonna water them in. Because we live in Kansas and our soils are very clay-based, they don't take in water very fast. So it's a good idea to go once over with water, let it sit for a couple minutes so it can soak in, then go over a second time or maybe even a third time. I know that there is a storm rolling in here, that's why I wanted to get these planted in the ground. So I'm hoping for some rain, but I'm gonna check on these tomorrow morning to make sure they're nice and saturated and deeply watered, because I wanna prevent the 2 stresses, nutrient deficiency and drought stress, right off the bat. I wanna make sure that the plants have what they need to thrive, okay? So that's pretty much the gist of in-ground planting. You may wanna add soaker hoses or mulch to help with moisture retention. I have neither of those 2 things ready to go, so I'm just gonna keep a good eye on it to make sure that they stay hydrated. Don't worry if your plants look limp and crazy. It's bound to happen. Plants are tougher than you give them credit for, so let them just get established before you start harvesting. Make sure that you start to see new growth before you start taking off older growth, just because you don't wanna kill your plants by over harvesting. A good rule of thumb is allowing 50% of the plant to remain intact and take the rest of it, right? Don't take the new growth, take the oldest growth. Second, I'm going to demonstrate how to plant greens into a container. And I have a couple reasons why I have these 2 methods that I'm trying out. I mean, not trying out, I've done them before, but demonstrating this year. I first of all wanted you to see that you can plant greens in multiple settings, whether you have an in-ground garden or if you have a container garden. You can grow greens either way. But the second reason is I'm doing a little bit of an experiment. I want to see how greens grow in different settings. So my in-ground garden, they're in full sun and they can tolerate that, but sometimes full sun raises that leaf temperature and causes bolting. My theory is it might cause bolting earlier the more full sun that the greens have. I'm going to try putting this container in some part shade on the front porch. So not only is it easy access to the kitchen, but also it's going to be in part shade. So I want to see if they keep from getting bitter for a longer period of time. So stay tuned for that experiment result. But that's what horticulture is all about, right? Experimentation. So this is just a demonstration of that. Without further ado, let's plant up this container. Now that we have braved the outdoor planting in this wind, I can tell a storm's blowing in. We're gonna go ahead and do a salad bowl planting in a pot for the front porch. So start with really fresh potting mix. You can use Miracle Grow or something you find at the garden center. But what you want to make sure, because there's no added nutrients in potting mix unless you're using like a Miracle Grow with the pelleted fertilizer, you need to either add compost or add a slow release pelleted fertilizer here, or a granular, something. You need to add some kind of added nutrients according to label instructions into the potting mix to support your lettuce growth. Because remember, the third thing that can cause bolting or bitter taste is nutrient deficiency. So as you can see, I have my pot filled up with potting mix here, and there's no added nutrients in this yet, but I'm gonna fertigate or fertilize while I irrigate because I like that method of fertilizing the best. So let's just arrange these in here. You know, this is where the artistic effect comes in. I am going to arrange these according to height. So I know Swiss chard gets taller than the others, so I'm going to put that here in the center of the pot. You can do one or two plants. I really want a full mix. Recycle your plastics. Don't toss your tags to the wind. You can put them in your container or in ground. I know they withstand the summer conditions. Next, I'm just gonna fill in. As you can see here, I have my pot of greens, and I'm going to move it over to the front porch so that I can fertigate it, water it in, and get it the much needed nutrients to help it get leafy and full and wonderful. Nice big pot of salad. I was gonna mention, this is quite the large pot. Really, for greens, their roots are in the top 6 to 8 inches, so you don't really need a pot this deep. This is just what I had. And after the greens turn bitter or flower, I'm just gonna pop them out of here and put in some nice fun edible flowers, maybe marigolds or geraniums, and reuse that soil. So multi-purpose. So as mentioned, I am fertigating, so I've added granular fertilizer into my watering can and mixed that up. And now, all that's left to do is water. There is one thing I neglected to mention and neglected to include in this video, and that is my edible flowers. You can add cool season flowers like pansies and nasturtium in amongst your greens, and then you can eat those flowers in your salads, and it's really quite beautiful. So I'm kicking myself for doing that. But if you want to see what varieties I'm offering on the bus, whether it's my greens or my edible flowers or herbs or whatever else, my tomatoes coming around the bend, make sure you head to my spring catalog on the website. I'll put the link below in the description, and then head to the events page so that you can track down the plant bus and get yourself a nice salad bowl on your patio or front porch. Until next time, you've been watching Unearth Horticulture.